My dear friends, I would like to welcome you to the talk on home trade and foreign trade. In the last sessions, we had the discussions on introduction to the foreign trade, meaning, definitions, and followed by the features of foreign trade with evolution and the foreign trade during the pre-independent era and also post-independent era. Now we'll have a discussion on the concept of home trade and foreign trade and the distinction between these two aspects, and let us discuss in detail. At the outset, home trade refers to the trading activity or business activity which involve buying and selling of goods and services in exchange of money or money's worth. This home trade was very old, and in the earlier days we had barter system where exchange of goods for goods instead of money used to take place. From this, it is clear in those days, people with a surplus of one particular good used to exchange for the other commodity. In that way, the barter system used to go on. In this home trade, it's a beauty that you will understand both the parties in this trade, that is buyer and seller. They are in the business and they will be residing within the territorial limits of a country. Sometimes they may be having face-to-face contact, or otherwise from different places also they'll be having contacts either through telebusiness or recently introduced video calling, an online tool similar to face-to-face contacts and trade used to take place. Home trade is also called as domestic trade, where buyers and sellers meet at one place, maybe a local market, a regional market, or otherwise markets located within the territorial jurisdiction of either district or state, or otherwise across the states within the limits of the country. This home trade usually takes place locally or between two different districts or across two different or many different states. Here, both buyer and seller reside in the same country. So goods and services as well as currency will remain with our country only, and there is no question of outflow or outgoing of currency. So this will add to the gross domestic product of our national income and hence very much encouraged. Then we will have a look at the foreign trade. Foreign trade is a trading activity or otherwise a business activity where exchange of goods and services by involving buyers and sellers involving in the form of exporters or importers staying in different countries across the globe. In this trade, either exports or imports, either inflow or outflow of foreign currency will take place. This will have the impact on the balance of trade and balance of payments, and it will be under the control of governmental regulations and procedures. Now, foreign trade is falling within the framework of foreign trade regulations. Usually, Director General of Foreign Trade is the competent authority, and also the Ministry of Commerce will also give directions and guidelines from time to time. Here, unlike home trade, where buyers and sellers have direct contact, they will be residing in different countries, hence they cannot meet each other. For the success of the foreign trade, the involvement of middlemen is all the more essential because they will play vital role. We can name some of the middlemen like Indian houses, clearing agents, forwarding agents, foreign exchange bankers or merchant bankers, and also customs authorities and the like. At this juncture, we can broadly classify the activities of foreign trade into three categories. It is pertinent to know this classification before going into the discussion. It is import trade, export trade, and entry port trade. The same can be viewed from the flow chart here. It is quite essential to recollect that import trade implies purchase of goods and services from the other countries, namely any of the foreign country. Usually, the goods which are advantageous from the point of view of cost, availability of raw materials, and keeping in view the associated difficulties from the domestic market, this is encouraged. Normally, we are getting from outside the country, it will be somewhat costlier, but import is not encouraged in all the cases. Only in those cases where it is highly essential, inevitable, and which involve the lesser cost of production, that only will be helpful. In this process, we are purchasing from our country, so our currency will go out. This will have the impact on the currency levels and balance of payment and trade levels. Sometimes on certain goods, anti-dumping duty is also levied to control the unauthorized and unusual imports from the foreign nations. Coming to export trade, it is very much encouraged when the resources are available in plenty and where the rates are attractive and lucrative. Definitely, this will enrich the exporter as well as the economic system by way of earning foreign exchange to our nation. It involves the inflow of the foreign exchange and also helps to promote bilateral and friendly relations with the United Nations or its affiliated regional associations like SAARC, which means South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, or G15 nations, a group of 15 nations, or otherwise G7 and the like, because of the ties between the friendly nations and during the visits of our country headed by Prime Minister or President of India or Vice President in their delegations to various foreign countries will have cultural, trade, and other relations which will promote international peace and fraternity. Now, we'll have one more kind in the trade of foreign policies, entry pot trade. This is, as discussed earlier, a hybrid form of trade where both the activities of import and export trade are involved. In this, the goods are imported from other countries in the form of raw materials, and with the help of our skilled labor and mechanization, we will duly undertake many processes and keep the product in a finished state by giving branding, packing, along with packaging and placing the same for exports to those countries who have placed indents for the supply of these goods from other countries. This is a source for earning foreign exchange, but considering the volume and the limit of this scope is very limited. But for the promotion of friendly relations, sometimes to help the friendly nations, this kind of cooperation and trade relations do exist in the interest of international understanding and promoting cultural ties. After this brief talk, let us have a look at the difference between home trade and foreign trade. As discussed earlier, home trade is also called as domestic trade, which is generally conducted within the boundaries or territorial limits or borders of a country. Whereas coming to foreign trade, it is called as a global trade. Usually, the parties involved are residing in two different nations or many other locations. Coming to home trade, buyers and sellers reside in different places but within the territorial jurisdiction of a country. This residence may be either local or within the districts or within the state and within the limits of nation. Now, if we take the foreign trade, the parties are called importers and exporters, and they do reside in different nations across the globe. In the home trade, the customers' preferences for products, quality, range, and varied interests are very limited, but have the limited choice. For example, Make in India, the brand for Indian products. It is somewhat giving brand affiliation where fast moving consumer goods are preferred in this manner. At the same time, In the foreign trade, products with multicolors, varied ranges, and preferences of taste, quality, and other specifications made from many of the nations with varied price levels, labels, and affiliations with different specifications used by many nations in the global market will be there. Usually, in the home trade, the level of specialization is confined to a country, keeping in view the customs, tradition, and cultural heritage of the country. So, all this will contribute for the national level. Nowadays, we'll have Patanjali products or herbal products, which are very much used, available, and manufactured from our own country, but they are unique in nature. While coming to the foreign trade, because the nations are scattered and more in number, specialization level is also wider. Many nations do compete in this manufacture, and the firms with multinational companies having all the durable and price wise the fair will be standing the test of competition and will achieve the bidding, and this will be price wise also quality wise very reasonable and useful. In the home trade, if we see, the parties are almost directly available. There is no scope for damage or cheating. Sometimes anything happens, it will be made good or duly returned, and the loss will be made good because both the parties reside within the country. Even a phone call or mail will also serve the purpose. So the element of risk and uncertainty is very less. So, moreover, when unforeseen things like accidents or thefts take place, it can be very well managed, and we can face the situation with sufficient risk management mechanisms like in insurance or investigation and detection of the lost goods. Whereas in the foreign trade, the degree of risk and uncertainty is very high because the parties reside in two different locations, and the responsibility will be shared by the middlemen in the channel, where even a small laxness or slippery will also cause damage and subjected to return, where the goods will be very much in the risky situation. In addition to this, these goods are sent by shipment by taking voyage policy or something like that, But unforeseen vagaries of the nature, like cyclone, burglaries, or sea pirates, or sinking of vessels, or something like that, will also cause huge loss. So there is a greater degree of risk element in this foreign trade. Next, coming to the home trade, because it is supported by the government, and now government is encouraging Make in India and other MSME activities in support of the entrepreneurs and hassle-free mechanism. Industrial policies also very much consumer friendly, as well as the entrepreneurs are coming forward. Even in the Telangana, T Hub is formed where the industrial policy is so conducive for them to come and invest in our state. Here, there is no exchange of foreign currency. Both buyer and seller reside in the same country, and all the amount what is bought and what is sold will stay in the country where outflow is zero. It is like a zero sum game. It gets exchanged with buyer and seller. So this is encourageable and friendly feature of the economy. Coming to the balance of trade and balance of payment, current account deficiency, these are all need to be monitored in the imports and exports divisions of the foreign trade authority. Sometimes government will clamp controls, and in some difficult situations they will not grant licenses for the import of goods. Then this appears to be somewhat rigid. The next important aspect is the trade policies differ from nation to nation, but within the nation they will be uniform and there will be minor variation. As far as India is concerned, we have one nation, one taxation. That is the policy we are following. The goods and services tax, GST, introduced from 2017, July 1st, is giving good results, and it is friendly in nature to the consumers as well as entrepreneurs. In the foreign trade policies of the different nations, there will be certain laws or rules which have to be adhered to scrupulously. No deviation will be permitted. In addition to that, the customs duty will be levied, and other duties like anti-dumping duty and the like need to be paid. All this will burden the buyer, and this will have to be borne by the importers. Coming to documentation process, it is very simple and it does not involve too many lengthy, rigid, and complex circumstances, unlike foreign trade. and there is protection from our Indian laws like Contract Act, Sale of Goods Act, and the like. Whereas in the foreign trade, where the parties are in different nations, some responsible activities are being handled by the middlemen. It is dire need and highly appreciated to have a very lengthy and complex documentation procedure. Here, the preparation of documentation is consuming a lot of time, but rigid in nature with a foolproof mechanism to protect the interests of both the parties involved in the foreign trade, that is, importer and exporters. Then the laws of a particular country to be followed in the home trade, and same is the case with regard to the foreign trade also. Then coming to home trade, transportation, warehousing, costs are very less and simple when compared with the foreign trade because all are within the limits of a nation or state or otherwise district. Whereas in case of foreign trade, shipment, warehousing, and clearance charges, dark dues, if not lifted in right time, sometimes demurrage will also be levied. This will all add to the cost of the product. Hence, it is costlier, especially in the foreign trade when we are importing, and expensive. If we look at domestic trade, this foreign trade is expensive. Now, to assimilate that home trade promotes the improvement of gross domestic product and will do add to the national income. Hence, there is every need for us to encourage the home trade and its volume needs to be increased. Whereas coming to foreign trade, there will be lesser and lesser imports and more of exports are preferred, where outflow of national income and foreign exchange is limited in case of imports and also for entry port trade. So coming to the levels of buying and selling, it is very large and the volume is high in the gross national domestic product, which adds to the national income statistics. But the volume of foreign trade is relatively small and less because of the impact of outflow of the foreign exchange will definitely adversely affect the economy. Hence, so many conditions and restrictions are also clamped in this level. Now, level of difficulty is very less due to price stability and there is effect on the rupee value changes. So it will benefit both the buyer and seller and there will not be any tussle over the issue. Whereas coming to foreign trade, it faces the difficulty in fluctuations in the exchange rates in the market and it very much affect the daily exchange rates and thus rigid in its consideration levels. So the parties involved must be aware of the daily exchange rates being announced by the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and custom, and that has to be taken into account in this process. With this, we end this session. Thank you very much.